Let me tell you about the last Saturday in September. Not this past September. The one before that. The one that I have come to think of as the day I finally stopped. It was a cool morning. The kind of Saturday that smells like the end of something dried, leaves a faint edge of wood smoke from somewhere down the street. The sky, that particular shade of blue that only happens in the weeks before the world goes grey. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a letter I had been writing for 3 weeks. Not a letter I planned to send. Not immediately, maybe not for years, possibly not until I was gone. It was addressed to my granddaughter Sophie, who was 4 years old and could not read, and had no idea that the person writing it was sitting 2 towns away at 7 in the morning, with tears. She had already decided not to cry. I had been writing the letter in pieces, a paragraph here, a sentence there, setting it down when it became too much, and coming back to it when I had steadied. 3 weeks to arrive at something that told the truth without bitterness. That was the goal. Truth without bitterness. The truth is a gift. Bitterness is a burden. Sophie deserved the gift, not the burden. When I finished that morning, I read it through one last time. Then I folded it, carefully put it in an envelope, wrote Sophie's name on the front, and placed it in the locked fireproof box at the back of my closet, the same box where I keep my important documents, my marriage certificate. Harold's watch, the photograph of my mother on her wedding day. Then I picked up my phone. I called my son Ryan. He answered on the 3rd ring, slightly irritated in the way of someone interrupted from a weekend morning. "Mum, what's up?" I want you to notice those words. What's up? The tone of a man who expects this call to be a request for permission to visit for confirmation of plans for negotiation of the terms under which he would allow me to see my own grandchild. I said, "Ryan, I want to let you know that I won't be calling to arrange visits with Sophie anymore. Not because I don't love her. I love her more than you can imagine. But because the arrangement we've been operating under for 3 years is not something I'm willing to continue." Silence. "What arrangement?" he said. I had prepared for this question, had turned it over many times, and I had decided to answer it directly without accusation, without the long inventory of grievances I had accumulated simply clearly true. "The arrangement," I said, "where my access to Sophie depends on what I provide to you and Kayla, whether that's money or housework, or silence about things that matter. I've been operating under those terms for 3 years because I love Sophie and I was afraid to lose her. But I've realized something, Ryan. I was losing her anyway. I was losing myself. And that's not good for anyone, not me, not you, and not her." The silence that followed was long enough that I thought for a moment the call had dropped. Then Ryan said, "You're being dramatic. I had prepared for this too." "I don't think I am," I said. "I think you know exactly what I'm describing. I think somewhere in you, you know." I paused. "When you're ready to talk about this honestly, not defensively, not with Kayla managing the conversation, I'm here. I love you. I love Sophie. But I'm done being a transaction." I hung up. I sat with my coffee, which had gone cold. I thought about Sophie's face the last time I had seen her 2 months earlier at a visit I had earned by repainting the bathroom in Ryan and Kayla's house over an August weekend at 63 years old, on a ladder in the August heat. I thought about her running to me in the backyard, arms out, completely certain of her welcome. Grandma Bev, Grandma Bev. That certainty. That specific, unconditional certainty of a child who has not yet learned that love is conditional on anything at all. That is what I was trying to protect. Not my dignity, though that mattered. Not my time and money and labor, though those mattered too. Her certainty. The part of Sophie that believed without question that she was loved, and that the people who loved her would always be there. I was trying to make sure that when she was old enough to understand the whole story, she would know that her grandmother's love had never, for one single moment, been a transaction, even when everything around it was. My name is Beverly. Everyone calls me Bev. I am 63 years old, recently retired from a 28-year career as a hospital administrator in a mid-sized city in the Pacific Northwest. I am organized, direct, and not particularly prone to sentimentality about anything, except it turns out a 4-year-old girl with her father's dark eyes and her mother's gap-toothed grin. I have been widowed for 4 years. My husband Gerald died of a heart attack at 61. Unexpected fast, the kind of loss that rearranges the entire furniture of your life without asking permission. Gerald was a quiet man, a high school science teacher, a person of genuine kindness. He loved his son. He loved in his short time knowing her his granddaughter. I still talk to him sometimes. In my head, in the garden, in the particular silence of early mornings. I tell him things. He usually responds with the same dry observation he would have made in life, patient, accurate cutting, precisely to what matters. What he would say about the situation I am going to describe to you is something I will tell you when we get to the end. I'll let you decide if I'm right. My son, Ryan, is 38 years old. He is my only child. I want to sit with that for a moment, only child, because it is important context for everything that follows. When you have one child, all of your parental love, all of your parental hope, all of your parental anxiety is concentrated in one person. There is no distribution, no second child to absorb the overflow. Everything you feel about being a parent flows toward one human being, and that concentration creates a particular kind of bond that is also, when things go wrong, a particular kind of wound. Ryan grew up in a house full of books and science projects and Saturday morning pancakes. Gerald coached his soccer team for 6 years. I attended every school play, every awards ceremony, every parent-teacher conference. We were present, involved, and deeply interested in the person he was becoming. He became an intelligent, capable, somewhat cautious man. A project manager at a tech company, good at his job, respected by colleagues. He can be funny in a dry, quick way that reminds me of his father. He has Gerald's shoulders and my stubbornness, which is an uncomfortable combination in anyone. He married Kayla 7 years ago. Kayla. I have thought carefully about how to describe Kayla because Kayla is the most complicated person in this story, and I don't want to be unfair to her. Kayla is 34 years old. She grew up in a household with significant financial instability, a father who moved between jobs, a mother who worked multiple jobs to compensate a family that understood scarcity in a way that shapes a person's relationship with money and resources in ways that are very hard to undo even when the scarcity is no longer present. I say this not as an excuse for what she did, but as context, because I genuinely believe that some of what happened came from a place of accumulated fear about resources rather than pure calculation. Fear, in my experience, is not the same as malice, but it can produce nearly identical results. Kayla is also organized, efficient, and extremely clear-eyed about priorities. She knows what she wants, she develops a plan to get it, and she executes consistently. These are qualities I respected and even admired in the abstract. The problem was that I was eventually one of the resources her plan involved. Ryan and Kayla have one child, Sophie. Born 4 years ago on a Tuesday in June at 4:17 in the morning. I was in the waiting room. I had driven through the night. When Ryan came out to tell me she had arrived healthy, perfect 7 pounds and 3 ounces, I cried in a way I had not cried since Gerald's funeral. Not sadness, the opposite. The specific, overwhelming fullness of a person whose world has just expanded in a direction they didn't know was possible. Sophie. 4 years old at the time of this story. A child who runs rather than walks, who asks approximately 400 questions per hour, who has decided that dinosaurs and butterflies are simultaneously the most important topics in the universe and has not seen a contradiction in this. My granddaughter. The card they played. I want to be precise about when the transactional nature of things became clear to me because I think clarity about the beginning matters. In the early months after Sophie was born, I was simply present in the way a new grandmother is present, visiting, often holding the baby, bringing food offering to help whenever I could. Kayla had taken 3 months of maternity leave, but returned to work as a marketing director when Sophie was 12 weeks old. Ryan worked long hours. They were genuinely overwhelmed in the way that new parents with demanding careers and no family nearby often are. I stepped up. I drove to their house 40 minutes each way, 2 to 3 times a week, to watch Sophie while they worked, or while Kayla had appointments, or while they needed a break. I did not charge for this. I did not expect to be repaid. I was a grandmother who loved her granddaughter and had the time and desire to be involved. In retrospect, I think the first moment things shifted was around Sophie's first birthday. Kayla mentioned casually in passing that they were thinking about redoing the kitchen. New countertops, a backsplash. She had been looking at prices, and it was really expensive. I said, "It always is." She said, "We were hoping maybe you might want to contribute since you've been so involved, and the kitchen is obviously where you spend a lot of time when you're here." I looked at her. The logic of what she had said was, to put it gently, creative. My involvement in their home, volunteering my time to care for their child, was being presented as a reason I should also contribute financially to their kitchen renovation. I said, "I wasn't planning to, but thank you for mentioning it." Kayla smiled, moved on. Nothing more was said. I thought it was simply a tone-deaf moment, an awkward ask. I have worked with enough people in enough organizations to know that people say things that don't come out the way they intended, and the right response is to note it and move forward. I moved forward. 6 weeks later, Ryan called me with what he described as a favor. "Kayla and I have a work thing this weekend, Friday evening into Saturday. We were hoping you could watch Sophie." "Of course," I said. "I'd love that. Does she come to me, or do I come to you?" "If you could come here, that would be better. Sophie likes her own bed. Also, a slight pause, the bathroom is really in bad shape. If you happen to have some time while Sophie's napping, there are supplies under the sink. You wouldn't have to do the whole thing." I let that sentence sit for a moment. "Ryan," I said carefully, "are you asking me to clean your bathroom?" "Just if you have time," he said. "No pressure." I came that weekend. I watched Sophie, who was magical and wonderful, and at 11 months old had recently discovered that she could pull herself to standing, which she did repeatedly and with enormous self-congratulation. I did not clean the bathroom. I mention this because I want you to know I did not simply comply from the beginning. I noticed the pattern early, and I said no to it at least once, clearly. What I did not do was name it. What I did not say was, "I notice you're asking me to provide free labor in exchange for time with Sophie, and I want to say clearly that I'm here to see my granddaughter, not to maintain your property." I should have said it. I know that now. Instead, I said no to individual requests, while failing to address the system the requests were building. And systems are much harder to dismantle than individual requests. Over the 3 years between Sophie's first birthday and the September morning, I described at the beginning of this story a system developed. I am a hospital administrator by training, and by nature I understand systems. I can map them. I can see their components, their incentive structures, their pressure points. What I failed to do for too long was apply that analytical capacity to what was happening in my own family. Perhaps because it was painful to see clearly. Perhaps because clarity would require action. Perhaps because every time I saw Sophie's face, every time she ran to me shouting, "Grandma Bev," the cost of the system felt worth paying for just one more visit. Let me describe the system as it functioned. Access to Sophie was not explicitly transactional. There was never a written agreement, never a spoken contract, never a moment where Ryan or Kayla said outright, "You can see Sophie if and only if you provide X." It was more subtle than that. When I provided help, financial help, labor logistical support visits happened easily. Ryan would call, suggest a date, and the visit would occur without obstacles. Sophie would run to the door. 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes a whole afternoon. Good visits. Warm visits. The visits I had been hoping for when I imagined being a grandmother. When I did not provide help, when I declined a request, or when a period passed where no request had been made, the visits became harder to arrange. Schedules were suddenly full. Sophie was tired. Kayla had plans. Ryan was working. Never an explicit denial. Always a reason. Always a reason that was technically plausible, and that I could not in isolation point to as proof of anything. It was only the pattern, the consistent repeating correlation between my cooperation and my access that revealed the system for what it was. Let me give you specific examples, because I think specificity matters here. Example 1. The car repair. It was winter of the first year. I had just refused politely but clearly to contribute to their kitchen renovation. The following 3 weeks, I received no invitations to see Sophie, and my calls to Ryan went unanswered or were returned briefly distractedly. Then Kayla texted, "Ryan's car needs a transmission, fix $1,800. We're really stretched. Do you think you might be able to help?" I thought about it for 2 days. I helped. Within 48 hours, Ryan called. "Hey Mum, do you want to come see Sophie this weekend?" I came that weekend. Sophie had learned a new word, butterfly, and said it approximately 80 times. It was wonderful. I added it to the notebook I had started keeping. Not because I was planning anything, but because I am a woman who keeps records, and something in me recognized that these events were not random. Example 2. The landscaping weekend. Spring Sophie's second year. Ryan and Kayla needed their yard landscaped ahead of a party they were hosting. Ryan mentioned it to me in conversation. I made no offer. The following week, I called to arrange a visit with Sophie and was told she was in a phase where she was clingy with Kayla, and visits from other people were really disruptive right now. I suggested perhaps coming when Kayla was home so Sophie could have both of us present. Kayla was always busy that week. The following Sunday, Ryan called. "Hey Mum, I know you've got a great eye for gardens. We're trying to sort out the backyard before the party and it's a big project. Any chance you'd want to help? We'd obviously have you over for the party afterward." I spent a Saturday pulling weeds and planting annuals in Ryan and Kayla's backyard. Sophie came outside during the afternoon and sat in the garden with me for 2 hours, handing me small rocks and examining earthworms with the focused scientific intensity of a 2-year-old. I was happy. This is the most shameful part of all of it. I was happy because she was there and she was wonderful, and she handed me rocks and examined earthworms. And for those 2 hours, I forgot that I had paid for the visit in labour I had not offered. I added it to the notebook. Example 3. The $500. Autumn of the second year. I had visited Sophie regularly throughout the summer. It was a good summer, more access than I'd had before. I later understood why Kayla had been between jobs for 3 months, and I had helped in various ways. I won't itemize, but the help totaled somewhere around $2,000 in direct financial assistance, plus an uncounted amount of childcare. When Kayla returned to work, the access began to constrict again. In October, Ryan called me on a Sunday evening. He sounded tired and slightly uncomfortable in the way he does when he is about to ask for something. "Sophie's been asking for you," he said, which was the specific sentence they had learned to use, the one that leveraged my love for Sophie in the most direct and efficient possible way. "I'd love to see her," I said. "Yeah, the thing is," and here came the pivot, "Kayla and I are in a tight spot this month. Her first paycheck got delayed by 2 weeks, and we've got some bills due. It's just a cash flow thing, it'll sort itself out. But right now we're short." "How much?" I asked. Flatly. A pause at my flatness. $500 would make a real difference, he said. I thought about the notebook. I thought about the car repair and the landscaping and the $2,000 over the summer. I thought about the sentence, "Sophie's been asking for you." I said, "Ryan, are you telling me about a cash flow problem because you're updating me on your life, or are you telling me because you expect me to give you money?" The longest pause of our conversation. "I just thought you might want to help," he said. "And Sophie asking for me," I said. "Is that related to the $500? Mum, that's not fair." "I'm going to ask you a question," I said, "and I need you to answer it honestly. If I say I can't help with the money, will the visit happen anyway?" Silence. Very long silence. "Ryan," I said, "I need you to answer that." "She's my daughter," he said finally. "I get to decide when she sees people." "Not of course the visit will happen. Not the money, and the visit have nothing to do with each other." He said, "I get to decide when she sees people." In that sentence, unguarded, unmanaged, the real thing. Finally showing through. I heard everything I had been trying not to see for 2 years. I said, "I know you do." I said, "I'll transfer the 500. And I hung up. And I sat at my kitchen table in the dark for a long time. What changed in year 3 was the scale. For the first 2 years, the requests had been manageable individually, even as they accumulated into something I knew was wrong. A car repair here, a weekend of labor there, $500 in a tight month. In year 3, the requests became larger. And something else changed too. The pretense began to drop. There was less and less performance of the visits being separate from the transactions. Ryan and Kayla became more direct. Not because they were honest, they never quite arrived at honesty, but because I had proven over 2 years that I would comply. The system was established. They no longer needed to maintain the fiction that the two things were unrelated. The August bathroom incident was the one that finally broke something in me. Sophie was 4. She had started preschool and was in a phase of believing that everything in the universe could be explained if you asked why enough times. She also had a new obsession with a cartoon about a family of meerkats, which she referenced constantly and in contexts that made no sense. Ryan had been renovating their upstairs bathroom. He had started the project in the spring, new tile, new fixtures, a full gut job. He had done some of the work himself, but had gotten overwhelmed and stopped. By August, there was a half-finished bathroom with exposed drywall, incomplete tilework, and a toilet that had been temporarily reinstalled, but was not level. He called me on a Thursday. "Mum, I need help." I had not seen Sophie in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The longest gap since she had been born. I had sent a card for her birthday that had not been acknowledged. I had called 3 times, and each time been told this week is really crazy. "What kind of help?" I asked. "The bathroom," he said. "I'm in over my head. I need someone who can help me finish the tile work and deal with the toilet situation. I know you helped Uncle Dave with his kitchen tile a few years back." I had helped my brother-in-law with kitchen tile 12 years earlier. I was 50 years old and had done it as a family favour, and it had not particularly qualified me as a general contractor. "Ryan," I said, "I'm 63. "I know, Mum. I'm not asking you to do it alone. I'd be there too. I just need help, and we can't afford to bring someone in right now." I said, "And Sophie. She'd be there. You'd see her all weekend." All weekend. 2 days with my granddaughter, whom I had not seen in 6 weeks, in exchange for finishing my son's bathroom renovation. I went. I do not want to tell you this. I am not proud of it. But I went, because Sophie was there, and she threw herself at me the moment I walked through the door with the full body abandon of a child who has been missing someone. And she said, "Grandma Bev, we have meerkats. Now, did you know meerkats live in tunnels?" And my resolution dissolved completely. I spent Saturday and Sunday helping Ryan finish the bathroom. I set tiles on my knees on a hard floor. I re-leveled the toilet. I caulked the shower. My back ached for a week. Sophie sat outside the bathroom door for portions of both days, talking to me through the doorframe about meerkats and preschool, and a girl in her class named Amara, who she was fairly certain was actually a princess. In the evenings, she sat in my lap, and I read to her until she fell asleep. Those evenings were perfect. The rest was not. On Sunday evening, when we were done and Ryan was inspecting the finished tile, he said, "This looks great. Thanks, Mum." And in those 2 words, "Thanks, Mum," the same thing you'd say to someone who had passed the salt. I felt something that had been bending for 3 years finally quietly snap. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just snap. I drove home. I opened my notebook. I began writing the letter to Sophie. I want to tell you about the letter, because the letter is the heart of this story, not the phone call I eventually made, not the no I eventually said. The letter. Because the letter is what I did for Sophie. The call and the no were what I did for myself. I wrote it over 3 weeks in the early mornings before the rest of the world was awake, at my kitchen table with coffee and the particular silence of a house where you are the only person. I wrote it to Sophie at 4 years old, but I wrote it for Sophie at 20 or 25 or 30, whoever she would be when she was old enough to need to understand the whole story. I want to share pieces of it with you, because I think you deserve to understand what I was trying to give her. I wrote, "Sophie, you are 4 years old, and you cannot read this yet. By the time you can, many things will have changed, including me. I will be older, or I may be gone. But I need you to know certain things, while I still can tell you clearly. The most important thing is this. I love you without conditions. Not because you are good, not because you ask the right questions, not because you hand me the right rocks in the garden, simply because you exist, and because you are mine. And because the morning they told me you had arrived, I cried in a waiting room in a way I had not cried in years. There was a time when I did not see you as often as I wanted to. This was not because I chose to be away. It was because the situation was complicated, and I made choices about how to respond to it that I am still working out whether they were right. But I need you to know it was never because I didn't want to be there. It was never because you were anything other than the best part of everything. If there are things about this time you don't understand about why your grandmother was sometimes present, and sometimes not about why things worked the way they did, I hope this letter answers those questions. I am going to try to tell you the truth, because the truth is a gift, and you deserve it. The truth is, your father loves you very much. I believe this completely. What I also believe is that he and your mother were under pressures that made them act in ways that were not fair, and that sometimes people under pressure do things they might not do otherwise. I am not writing this to turn you against anyone. I am writing this so that when you are old enough to navigate your own relationships with your own family, your own children, the people you love who sometimes disappoint you, you have a map. Not of what happened to me, but of what I learned from it. The map is, this love does not require anything from you except to be loved back. The moment someone uses love as a price for something else, the moment your access to a person or their access to you comes with conditions and transactions attached, that is the moment to look clearly at what is happening. Not with anger, just with clear eyes. You are allowed to love people and still see them clearly. These are not opposites. I have loved your father my entire life. I see him clearly. Both of these things are true. I love you, Sophie. The rocks in the garden, the meerkats, the 400 questions per hour, all of it. I love all of it. Grandma Bev. I folded the letter. I put it in the envelope. I placed it in the fireproof box. And then I picked up the phone and called Ryan. And I said enough. The hours after that call were strange. I had prepared myself for Ryan to be angry. I had prepared myself for accusations of drama, of overreaction, of being a difficult mother. I had prepared myself for Kayla to call for the conversation to get loud. What I had not prepared for was silence. Ryan did not call back. Not that day. Not the next day. Not for 2 weeks. No message from Kayla. No indirect communication through family members. Nothing. Just silence. I sat with it. It was an uncomfortable silence, the kind that is full of questions you can't answer, that forces you to sit with the reality of what you've done and what it might cost. The cost I was most afraid of was obvious, Sophie. If Ryan and Kayla responded to my withdrawal by withdrawing Sophie, by using her not as a card to be played, but as a door to be closed permanently, then my decision had not freed me. It had simply traded one kind of loss for a more complete one. I sat with this fear honestly. I talked to Gerald about it. In my head in the garden in the early mornings, what he said, what I imagine he would say, was Beverly. You cannot have a real relationship with Sophie if you buy every visit. What you have right now is not a relationship. It is a transaction. And a transaction can be ended by the other party at any time, regardless of what you do. You have no more security in the current arrangement than you would have walking away. Except in the current arrangement, you are also losing yourself. This is why I loved Gerald. He had a way of locating the precise structural flaw in an argument. He was right. The transaction offered no security. The illusion of security came with a cost that was over time destroying both me and whatever genuine relationship might have existed between me and my son. So I sat with the silence, and I waited. On day 12, Ryan called. Before I tell you about Ryan's call on day 12, I want to take you back through the notebook, because the notebook is what gave me the clarity to make the call in the first place. And I think it's important that you understand what 3 years looks like when it's written down, rather than experienced one visit at a time. When you experience it one visit at a time, each individual moment is bearable. The car repair feels like a one-time favor. The landscaping feels like a generous contribution to a family gathering. The $500 feels like helping a son through a temporary rough patch. When you write it down date amount, what was requested, what access followed, it becomes something else entirely. I started the notebook in the winter of Sophie's first year after the kitchen renovation request. I wrote in it inconsistently at first, more systematically as the pattern became undeniable. What the notebook contained by the time I made that September phone call was this 11 financial contributions over 3 years, ranging from $500 to $2,400. Total $11,350. 23 instances of providing labor cleaning renovation assistance yard work. Childcare without arrangements organizational tasks with an estimated value at standard rates of approximately $8,200. A careful notation of the correlation in the 7 months across 3 years, where I had neither given money nor provided labor, my combined visits with Sophie totaled 9 hours. In the periods surrounding financial or labor contributions, the same 7 months equivalent contained 41 hours of access. I am a hospital administrator. I know what a data pattern looks like. What the data said was not subtle. What the data said was, for every dollar spent or hour worked, approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes of time with my granddaughter could be expected. My granddaughter, whom I loved without qualification, for whom the going rate over 3 years had been established at roughly $14.50 per hour, plus whatever labor I could provide. I had been paying to see my own grandchild, not because anyone had said, "You must pay to see your grandchild," but because the system made the correlation clear enough that I had learned the way animals in scientific experiments learn which behaviors produced the desired outcome, and I had complied. I had been trained. This is the thing that was hardest to sit with. Not the anger at Ryan and Kayla, though, that was real. The harder thing was the recognition that I had participated, that I had, over 3 years, allowed the training to work. I had wanted Sophie enough that I had paid the price, over and over, until I finally decided that the price was destroying not just my bank account and my back, but the very thing I was paying to preserve a real, genuine, unconditional relationship with my granddaughter. A relationship where Sophie knew without question that her grandmother's love did not have a price tag. The notebook was what finally made me see it clearly. Numbers have that quality. They cut through the emotional noise. They show you in black and white what the sentiment and the hope and the love for your son have been obscuring. The system had been operating for 3 years. I had helped build it as much as Ryan and Kayla had. On the September morning I described at the beginning of this story, I closed the notebook, wrote the letter to Sophie, and made the phone call. And then I waited for day 12. He called on a Wednesday evening. I answered on the second ring. I had been expecting the call not necessarily that day, but sometime in some form, because Ryan is not a person who leaves things entirely unaddressed indefinitely. He is more strategic than that. He would calculate his approach. Day 12 suggested he had decided on something specific. "Mum," he said. "Ryan," I said, "I've been thinking about what you said." I waited. "I think you're wrong," he said, "about the arrangement. I think you're reading something into things that isn't there." I want to tell you that I was prepared for this. Revisionism, the rewriting of what had happened into something more comfortable. I had expected it, and I had decided how I would respond. "Ryan," I said, "I'm not interested in debating whether the pattern I observed was real. I observed it. I documented it. We can disagree about the interpretation, but we can't disagree about the facts." A pause. What do you mean documented? He said. I've been keeping records, I said, since Sophie's first year. Dates, amounts, what was requested, what access followed. It's quite thorough. Silence. I did not say what I would do with the documentation. I did not threaten anything. I simply told him it existed. The silence told me that its existence known was enough. I don't know what you want from me, he said finally. What I want, I said, is simple. I want to have a genuine relationship with my son and my granddaughter, not a transactional one. I want to see Sophie because I am her grandmother and she loves me, and I love her not because I've painted a bathroom or written a check. I want you to call me because you want to talk to your mother, not because you need something. I do want to talk to you, he said. Then talk to me, I said. Not about money, not about the house, about your life, about Sophie, about what's actually happening. I'm your mother. Another long pause. Kayla isn't happy about this, he said finally. The way you ended the call last time, she feels like you were accusing us of something. I was, I said. Gently, but yes. She wants to talk to you. I'm willing to do that, I said. When Kayla is ready for an honest conversation, not a managed one, I'm here. This is going to be complicated, he said. Ryan, I said, it has been complicated for 3 years. What I'm proposing is that it becomes simpler. He was quiet for a moment. I need to think, he said. I know, I said. Take your time. Can I? He started, stopped, tried again. Can I still call you? Something in me caught at that, the particular smallness of it. My 38-year-old son asking if he could still call his mother. Ryan, I said, you can always call me. I'm your mother. That doesn't change regardless of anything else. He exhaled. Okay, he said. I love you, I said. Yeah, he said. I know. He didn't say it back, not that day. That's okay. It would come eventually in its own time. You cannot rush these things. You can only tell the truth and wait. We hung up. I sat at the kitchen table. I thought about Gerald. Beverly, you cannot have a real relationship with Sophie if you buy every visit. Gerald was right. I was about to find out exactly how right. I want to be honest with you about the 18 months that followed that September call, because I think the temptation in a story like this is to present the main character as consistently strong, consistently wise, consistently certain, someone who made a decision and never wavered. That is not what those 18 months were like. Those 18 months were hard. There were weeks when I was certain I had done the right thing. Weeks when the clarity I had felt on that September morning felt solid and complete, when I could look at the notebook and see the pattern and remember precisely why I had said enough. And there were other weeks. Weeks when Sophie's birthday passed without a card, acknowledged when I found an old photograph of her in the garden with a handful of rocks, and sat at my kitchen table with it for a long time. Weeks when I would be in the grocery store or at the park or anywhere families gathered, and I would see grandmothers with their small grandchildren, and the loss would be sharp and sudden and specific. I am not going to minimize that. The cost was real. What helped, genuinely helped, was my sister Diane, who had watched the 3-year situation with increasing concern, and who, when I called her the week after the September call, said simply, "Good, it's about time. Now come over for dinner and stop sitting in that house alone." Diane had known Gerald for 30 years. She is also the kind of person who does not offer advice unless asked and does not withdraw it once given, which meant that throughout the 18 months, she would periodically look at me and say, "You're doing the right thing," with the particular authority of someone who means it. I also, in the second month after the September call, did something I had been telling myself I would do. For years, I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Sandra. She was in her early 60s, had a practice focused on grief and family systems, and possessed the particular quality I find most useful in a therapist. She did not tell me what to think, but she asked questions that led me to think more clearly than I could on my own. In our fourth session, I told her about the notebook. She asked, "When you kept those records, what were you hoping they would tell you?" I thought about it. "I think I was hoping they would tell me I was wrong," I said. "That when I looked at the numbers, the pattern wouldn't be there. That it was all coincidence and I was being paranoid." "And instead?" she asked. "The pattern was there," I said. "So the records were a form of hoping to be proven wrong." "Yes," I said. "And you were disappointed not to be." "The most disappointed I've been in a very long time," I said. She nodded. "You spent 3 years hoping you were wrong," she said. "That's not weakness, that's love." I sat with that for a while. "But it also meant," she continued, "that you stayed in a situation longer than was good for you because hoping you were wrong kept you from acting on what you knew." "Yes," I said. "The question now," she said, "is not whether you were right to leave the situation. You were. The question is what you want the future to look like, and whether the future you want is even possible." "That's the question I can't answer," I said. "Whether it's possible, whether Ryan is capable of actually changing the dynamic, whether Kayla is." "Then that," Sandra said, "is what you wait to find out." 18 months is a long time to wait. I waited. Ryan called sporadically across those months. Not to arrange visits, he understood that the transactional visit arrangement was over. He called because I had told him he could, and because underneath whatever Kayla thought or felt or wanted, I believed there was a part of my son that still needed to call his mother. The calls were awkward at first. Without the transactional structure, we didn't know entirely how to talk to each other. We had spent 3 years communicating primarily through the system request provision access, and without it, we had to find something more genuine. It took time, but it came. Small things, Ryan calling to tell me about a project at work he was proud of, calling to ask my opinion about something non-financial, calling on a Sunday because it was Sunday the way sons sometimes call their mothers on Sundays, for no reason, except that it is the thing you do. In the 8th month, he called and asked if he could come for dinner. Just him. He came on a Thursday. I made the pasta that was his favorite from childhood, the one with the tomato sauce I still make from scratch, because Gerald insisted it made a difference, and Gerald was right. We sat at my kitchen table, and we ate, and we talked. Not about Sophie, not about money, not about the bathroom or the landscaping or the car repair, about him, about his life, about what he was worried about and what he was glad about and what he was still figuring out. At the end of the evening, as he was putting on his coat, he said, "I know I owe you an apology." "You do," I said. "I'm not ready to do it right," he said. "I'm still working out the full picture of what I'm apologizing for, but I want you to know I owe you one." "That's a start," I said. He hugged me at the door. It was the first real hug, not a greeting hug, not an obligatory hug, but a real one I had received from my son in years. I stood at the door after he left and watched his taillights go down the street. Gerald, in my head. "I told you so." Me. "You absolutely did." But even across those 8 months of slowly rebuilding something with Ryan, there had been no Sophie. Kayla remained. Whatever Ryan was working through privately, Kayla had not come to me with an honest conversation, and the result was that my access to Sophie remained in practical terms absent. 4 years old, then 4.5, then close to 5, the letter in the box. I kept going to Sandra. I kept talking to Diane. I kept living my life. I had my own friends, my retirement projects, a garden that Gerald would have approved of, a book club that met on the first Tuesday of every month and reliably provided more drama than any family situation. I waited. Month 13, month 15, month 17. And then on a Tuesday in March, 18 months after the September call, Ryan called me at 7 in the evening. He called at 7 in the evening, and the moment I heard his voice, I knew something was wrong. Not the request voice. Not the managed, slightly too casual tone of a person who needs something and is building toward it. This was different. Tighter, more genuinely strained, the voice of a person in real trouble. "Mum," he said. I need to tell you something. Tell me, I said. I got laid off, he said. 3 weeks ago. The company restructured. Half the project management team is gone. I'm trying to stay calm about it, but it's a breath. It's bad. The severance covers 6 weeks and then we're in real trouble. I listened. I've been putting out applications. Nothing yet. The job market in my sector is terrible right now and Kayla is trying to help, but her salary alone doesn't cover everything. And we have the mortgage and Sophie's preschool fees and... He stopped. I waited. Because I knew what was coming. I had known from the first word of that phone call that this was the moment. Not the moment I had been hoping for, the moment I had been preparing myself to handle with clarity. The long pause. Then, Mum, I need to ask you something. I know, I said. You know? I know what you're about to ask, I said. You need money. A long exhale. Yes, he said. I sat with this for exactly the time I needed. Not long. I had been preparing for this moment for 18 months. Not planning it as revenge, I want to be precise about this. Not waiting for the opportunity to say no as a form of retaliation. But understanding in the back of my mind that the moment would likely come. That the dynamic we had operated under for 3 years would eventually run in the opposite direction. That my son, who had used my love for his daughter as leverage to extract resources from me, might one day need resources and have no leverage left. I had thought about what I would do in that moment. I had talked to Sandra about it. I had talked to Diane about it. I had sat with it in the early mornings at my kitchen table. I had decided. Ryan, I said, I want to ask you something first. Okay, he said. In the 18 months since September, I said, since the conversation where I told you I was done with the arrangement, have you thought about why I said what I said? A pause. Yes, he said quietly. And another pause. Longer. I think we did what you described, he said. I think Kayla had a system, and I went along with it because it worked, and I didn't let myself look at what it was costing you, or what it was teaching Sophie, about how relationships work. Something in me shifted. Slightly. Not resolved, but different. That, I said, is the most honest thing you have said to me in 3 years. He was quiet. I'm going to say no, I said, to the money. Silence. I'm saying no, I said, not to punish you. I'm saying no, because the way that I can genuinely help you right now, the help that means something, is not a check. It's this conversation, and the next one, and the one after that. It's being your mother instead of your resource. We're going to be in real trouble, Mum, he said. His voice was strained. Real. I know, I said, and I'm sorry about that, truly. But Ryan, you and Kayla built a financial life that included my money as a structural component without my knowledge or consent. The consequence of that is that when I'm not a part of the structure doesn't hold. That's a real consequence. I didn't create it. You did. Silence. You have a severance. You have Kayla's income. You have 6 weeks to find employment in your field. I will help you with your resume. I will talk to contacts I have in the tech sector. I have 3 or 4 I can reach out to. I will be available to watch Sophie so you and Kayla can both focus on solving this without paying for childcare. I will cook dinner and bring it over. I will do everything a mother can do that is not a cash transfer. A very long pause. You'd watch Sophie, he said quietly. I would love to watch Sophie, I said. Something shifted in his voice. She's been asking about you, he said. And there it was, the exact sentence. Sophie's been asking about you. The sentence that for 3 years had been the mechanism of extraction. The key that unlocked my compliance, because it targeted the most vulnerable part of me, my love for a child who did not understand why her grandmother wasn't there. This time, the sentence meant something different. This time, it was just true. Then tell her, I said, that her grandmother is coming to see her, not because of anything else, just because I love her and I want to. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. I'm not ready to do it right, the way he'd said 8 months ago. Not, "I know I owe you one." This time, "I'm sorry, Mum, for all of it." Quiet. Simple. His. "I know," I said. "I love you," he said. There it was. The thing that hadn't come on day 12. "I love you too," I said. "Now let me talk to your wife." Kayla got on the phone. I had thought about this conversation nearly as much as I had thought about the one with Ryan. I had turned it over from every angle in Sandra's office, in my garden, in the early mornings. What I had decided was I was not going to have the long, comprehensive accountability conversation. Not now. Not during a crisis. That conversation deserved the conditions of stability, not desperation. What I was going to do in this moment was lay down one clear truth and make one clear offer. "Kayla," I said when she came on the line. "Hi, Beverly." Her voice was controlled in a way that told me it was taking effort. She was not a person accustomed to being in a position of needing something. "I'm not going to offer money," I said. "Not right now, not through this crisis. I want to be honest about that, so there's no ambiguity." A pause. "Okay," she said carefully. "What I am offering," I said, "is myself. As Sophie's grandmother, as Ryan's mother, as someone who will genuinely show up without a transaction attached for the next 6 weeks while Ryan finds a new position. I'll watch Sophie. I'll bring food. I'll be there." Silence. "I need to say something," I said, "and I need you to just hear it, not respond to it right now. You can respond later." "Okay," she said. "What happened over the past 3 years," I said, "was not okay. You know that. I think you've known it for a while, and I'm not asking you to apologize to me right now in the middle of a crisis. But I am asking you to understand that whatever comes next between us, and I hope something real comes next, it's going to have to be built on something different than what came before." Silence. "I grew up with very little," she said finally, quietly, in a voice I had not heard from her before. "My parents were always one bad month away from something terrible, and I built plans to make sure that never happened to my family, and your resources were—" She stopped. It wasn't right. The way I thought about it wasn't right. This was, I think, the closest Kayla could come to what Ryan had managed. Not a full apology, but an explanation that was also, if you listened carefully, an admission. "I hear that," I said, "and I understand it better than you might think, but understanding something and allowing it to continue are different things." "Yes," she said. "Can I come Thursday?" I said. "To see Sophie?" A long pause. "Yes," Kayla said. "She'd love that." "Good," I said. "Beverly," she said just before we hung up. "Thank you for the offer, for all of it." "That's what family is," I said, "when it's working right." We hung up. I sat at my kitchen table. I was shaking slightly. I had not expected to be. I had felt so calm throughout the calls, so prepared, so certain of what I wanted to say. But my hands were shaking on the table, and I looked at them for a moment. Not fear, not regret. The specific physical response of someone who has just done something that took everything she had. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I called Diane. She answered on the second ring. "Well?" she said. I said, "No," I said. A beat. "Beverly Elizabeth Morton," she said. "I am so proud of you." I drove to Ryan and Kayla's house on Thursday morning. I had brought food, a casserole and a soup and 2 loaves of bread, because when you are a woman of a certain age and someone you love is in difficulty, food is the first language. It is not the only language, but it is the first one. When I knocked on the door, I could hear from inside the specific thunder of a 4.5-year-old running. The door opened. Sophie. She had gotten taller. Of course she had. 4.5-year-olds get taller. It is what they do. But the shock of it, of the 3 or 4 inches I had missed, was its own kind of grief, small and sharp. She looked at me for exactly half a second. Then she launched herself at me with the full-body certainty I had been carrying in my memory for 18 months. "Grandma Bev," I caught her. I held her. She was solid and warm, and she smelled like breakfast and the particular scent of small children that cannot be replicated or described, only recognized. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. My voice was not entirely steady. "I have a snake," she announced, pulling back to look at me with enormous eyes. "It's not real, it's plastic, but it's very realistic. Do you want to see it?" "I want to see nothing more in this world," I said. She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. Behind her in the hallway, Ryan stood. He looked tired, job loss, tired. The specific exhaustion of a person who has been sending applications into silence. But he also looked like himself. Like the version of himself that exists when he is not running a system. "Hi, Mum," he said. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. He hugged me. For a moment at the door, my son hugged me the way he used to when he was young, and the world was simple, and he was just a boy, and I was just his mother. Then Sophie reappeared with the snake. We moved into the living room. Ryan found a new position 10 weeks after the layoff. The work I had done, the resume, helped the introduction to 2 contacts in my network who were able to open doors that the open market applications had made a real difference. One of my contacts knew a hiring manager at a larger firm and put in a personal recommendation. Ryan was offered a position 2 levels above his previous role with a 20% increase in salary. He called me the day he signed the offer. "Mum," he said, and in his voice was something uncomplicated for the first time I could remember in years. Pure happiness. "I got the job." "I know," I said. "Dave texted me." He laughed. "Thank you," he said, "for all of it. The introduction. The dinners you brought over. The Thursdays with Sophie. All of it." "That's what family is," I said again. He was quiet for a moment. "Mum," he said, "I owe you a real conversation about the past 3 years, not during a crisis, a real one." "I know," I said. "When you're ready." "I'm ready," he said. "Then come for dinner Sunday," I said. "Bring Kayla." He brought Kayla. We sat at my kitchen table, the 4 of us, with Sophie at the smaller table I had set up in the corner of the kitchen with her own placemats and her plastic snake as a centerpiece. After dinner, Sophie fell asleep on the sofa, still clutching the snake, while the 3 of us talked. Ryan gave me the apology he had promised. It was thorough and specific and real, the kind of apology that can only be given by someone who has genuinely understood what they are apologizing for, not just performed the words, because the situation requires them. He talked about the car repair and the landscaping and the $500 on that October Sunday. He talked about the sentence, "Sophie's been asking for you," and what he had understood it to be doing. He talked about the August bathroom, the ladder, the August heat. He talked about the moment he had said, "I get to decide when she sees people," the one unguarded, unmanaged sentence of 3 years, and said, "I've thought about that more than anything else. I didn't realize until I said it, that I had been thinking it. That's worse than saying it intentionally. I had actually come to think of you as a supply, not a person." "Yes," I said. "I don't know exactly when that happened," he said. "Neither do I said. "These things develop gradually. That's what makes them so hard to see." "Kayla and I have talked about it," he said. He looked at Kayla, who had been quiet for most of the evening, not managed quiet, but genuinely listening quiet, which felt different. "We've talked about where it came from, and what it means, and what we need to do differently." I looked at Kayla. "Do you want to say anything?" I said. She thought for a moment. "I built a financial model," she said, "for our life, and I included your resources in it without telling you. And then when you didn't perform the way the model required, I used Sophie to create pressure. I knew what I was doing, Beverly. I want to be honest about that. Ryan went along with it, but I designed it." She looked at her hands. "My family was always broke," she said. "Always just barely not drowning. And when I built our family's finances, I swore I was going to build in every possible cushion. And you were a cushion I identified and started using. I never asked myself whether that was right. I just did it." She looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "Genuinely, I'm sorry." I looked at this woman, 34 years old, who had grown up counting every dollar, who had built careful walls against the scarcity she'd known as a child, who had organized her family's resources with the efficiency of someone who had learned early that security does not arrive on its own. I understood her more fully in that moment than I ever had before. "I believe you," I said, "and I accept your apology." Kayla exhaled. "What do we do now?" Ryan said. "We do this," I said. "We eat dinner on Sundays, and we talk to each other honestly, and we let Sophie grow up knowing that her family is real, not transactional, real." From the sofa, Sophie stirred slightly, clutching her snake. "Meerkats," she murmured in the half-conscious way of a sleeping child. The three of us looked at her. Ryan smiled. The real smile. Gerald's smile. "She's been going through a meerkat phase again," he said. "When was the first meerkat phase?" I asked. "About a year ago," he said. "You missed it. It was extraordinary." "Tell me everything," I said. He did. Sophie is now 5.5. She can read small words. Her name, cat, and dog, and mom, and dad, and recently grandma, which she announced with the triumph of a person who has just unlocked a door. She cannot read the letter yet. I think about it sometimes, the sealed envelope in the fireproof box, the truths I wrote on those September mornings, the map I made for her. I have thought about whether to give it to her. There are arguments for it. She will be a young woman one day who may encounter her own versions of these situations. Relationships with conditions attached, love with invisible price tags, and the map might help her. But there are also arguments against. The situation it describes is now being repaired. The people it describes most critically, Ryan, Kayla, are people who have done the hard work of becoming more honest. The version of them in the letter is not the only version of them. I talked to Sandra about this. "What would the letter tell Sophie?" Sandra asked, "that you couldn't tell her directly in conversation as she gets older and becomes ready for the fuller picture?" I thought about it. "Maybe nothing," I said slowly. "Maybe I wrote it for me, not for her." Sandra tilted her head slightly. "What does it do for you?" she asked. "It helped me see clearly," I said. "Writing it down, the truth without bitterness, that was the process that got me to the September morning. It was the work I had to do to arrive at a place where I could act from love rather than from anger." "So the letter did its job," she said. "Yes," I said. "Then it may not need to do anything else," she said. I sat with this. The letter is still in the box. I have not decided. I may decide differently when Sophie is older. I may give it to her. I may read it to her when she is 21 or 25 and the time feels right. Or I may leave it in the box as what it was, the work I did, to arrive at the person I wanted to be in the moment that mattered. A map I drew to find my way through. Not every map needs to be shared. Some are just for the person who made them. It is approximately 9 months since the Tuesday phone call when Ryan told me about the layoff. He has been in his new position for 7 months. It is going well. He calls on Sundays, most Sundays now, not everyone, but most. It is the kind of call where we talk about things that matter and things that don't, in roughly equal measure. The kind that accumulates over years into a relationship. Kayla and I have coffee about once a month. It is not warm in the way that Diane and I are warm, not easy and old and full of shared history. But it is honest. We see each other clearly. We have chosen from a position of full information to move forward together. There is a respect in that which is different from warmth, but perhaps in some ways more durable. Sophie. Sophie is 5.5, and has this month moved beyond meerkats into a phase involving rocks, specifically the collecting of rocks. She has 74 of them at last count, each named. I have contributed 8 rocks to the collection from my garden, each selected by Sophie with the gravity of someone making important acquisitions. I see her every 2 weeks, sometimes every week. There is no schedule, no arrangement, no correlation between what I provide and when I am allowed to come. I call Ryan or Kayla and say, "I'd love to see Sophie this week." And one of them says, "Saturday?" And I say, "Saturday?" And on Saturday, Sophie opens the door already talking about rocks. That is all it is. That is everything. Gerald in my head. Was it worth it? Me, the 18 months. Yes. Gerald. I know it was hard. Me, the hardest thing I've done since you died. Gerald, and now me. Now there are 74 named rocks and a Saturday. That's enough. Gerald. That's more than enough. I want to tell you what I actually learned from 3 years of the Grandchild Card and 18 months of saying no. Not the lesson that sounds right, not the clean, satisfying version, the real one with all its complications. The first thing I learned is that systems are not always conscious. Kayla designed a system, but I am not entirely sure she fully understood what she was designing in real time. The human mind is very good at constructing justifications that allow us to do things we might not do if we were naming them clearly. Kayla told herself, I believe genuinely that she was building security for her family. The framing that allowed her to use my love for Sophie as leverage was, Beverly wants to see Sophie and we need help, and it makes sense for those two things to work together. That framing is not honest, but it is the kind of dishonesty that people are capable of without full awareness. This does not make it okay. It makes it human. I learned that loving someone and seeing them clearly are not opposites, and that the clearer you see them, the more specifically you can love the real person, rather than the version you hope they might be. I saw Ryan clearly for perhaps the first time in those 18 months. And the Ryan I found on the other side of that clarity, the one who gave me the Thursday dinner apology, the one who called Dave the contact, the one who sat at my kitchen table and said, I had actually come to think of you as a supply, not a person. That Ryan is someone I can love without the ache of not quite knowing who I'm loving. I learned that the most powerful thing I could do for Sophie was not to keep paying the price of access. The most powerful thing was to refuse to teach her by example that relationships are transactions. Children learn about relationships from watching the people around them. If Sophie had grown up watching her grandmother arrive with a check or a paintbrush to earn the right to be there, if that was the model of family she absorbed, what would she have learned? That love has conditions. That closeness must be earned by providing things. That the people who love you are resources to be managed. I refused to teach her that. I hope I taught her something else. I hope I taught her by the letter in the box, by the September call, by the 18 months of real absence, rather than transactional presence by the Thursday morning, and the plastic snake, and the 74 named rocks. I hope I taught her that love does not negotiate, that it is either real or it isn't. And when it is real, it is absolutely worth waiting for. Now I want to ask you something, because this story, more than most stories of this kind, does not have a clean and simple justice moment. There is no single phone call that changes everything in one instant. The justice in this story is slower, more complicated, more ambiguous. And I think some of you are going to have strong opinions about what I did. So here's what I want to ask. Was it right to say no? Not just no to the money, but no to the whole arrangement. No to paying for visits. No to the transactional system. No to the version of being a grandmother that required me to earn my place in Sophie's life. I know some of you are thinking, but what about Sophie? What about the 18 months she was without her grandmother? What about the first day of school, the birthday, the moments I missed? Those are real. I missed real moments. Sophie grew 2 inches I didn't see. She went through a meerkat phase I didn't witness. Was that loss worth it? I think it was. I think the alternative, continuing in the transaction, continuing to model for Sophie that her grandmother's love was something you could buy and sell, was a greater loss, not immediately visible, but real. But I want to know what you think, because there are people watching this right now who are in the exact situation I was in, who are making the exact calculations I was making, who are paying the price in money or labor or silence or dignity, because the alternative is losing access to someone they love. I want to say something to those people directly. I don't know if what I did is right for you. Every family is different. Every situation has its own texture. And the decision to walk away from a transactional arrangement that involves a grandchild or a child or a sibling or anyone you love is not simple, and you should not make it casually. But I want you to consider, what is the transaction teaching What is the price paying for? Ultimately, if the answer is a real relationship, genuine closeness, a grandchild who knows she is loved, then the price might be worth it. But if the answer is temporary access to a person who will continue to move the goalposts as long as you keep paying, then the price is not buying what you think it's buying. And the hardest question of all is the version of the relationship you have. Right now, the transactional one actually protecting your connection to the person you love? Or is it slowly destroying it? I spent 3 years thinking I was protecting my connection to Sophie by paying the price of access. I was wrong. I protected it by refusing to pay. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you've been in a situation like this. Tell me what you would have done or what you're doing right now. I read every comment. I am Beverly. Sophie is somewhere right now with 74 named rocks, and she knows without question that her grandmother loves her. That's the whole story. That's everything.